have gone missing. Okay. They will come. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Why is there a dalliance in terms of this knowledge? You know, this is what is talked about. In Upayanti, an approach without dalliance, without fear. So the dalliance with the Upanishad or with Brahma Vidya comes from, as a result of many reasons. The predominant, prevalent reason is because the prayojana is not understood. What is the prayojana? We just talked about the removal of samsara, and that it is revealing to me my true identity, and it is going to remove all kinds of things that I don't want from my life. It is going to give. That is what moksha means. Moksha means moksha from everything I don't want, it is going to give. That is not sufficiently understood. That is one reason for the dalliance. So when things get really desperate, I come to the Upanishad. Then I start to feel a little better. Then I stop attending the classes. This is one form of dalliance. Then the other kind of dalliance is reason for the dalliance is because the mumukshutvam is not developed sufficiently. What is mumukshutvam? Jignasutvam, the desire for the knowledge. And that this knowledge is the only thing that is going to free me is not understood. This pursuit is taken at par, on a par with all other pursuits. And people will tell me this, I go golfing at this such and such a time I do this, then I do puja, then I do shravanam, then I go to bed. There is shravanam is one more thing in addition to all the other things. So all the other things are given equal, all the other pursuits are given equal veracity. In addition, this pursuit of Brahman becomes one more thing to be pursued. That's why people say, I don't have the time. There are too many things going on. I don't have the time. I cannot make the effort because I don't have the time. Because there are competing commitments. And the problem with these competing commitments is just that the resulting sense of overwhelm is because the nature of the commitment is not understood. One is overwhelmed, I have too many things to do and I don't have time for one more pursuit. If this is regarded as one more pursuit, there will always be never enough time, never enough energy, never the right time to study, never the correct, thing to pursue. And always, even if you do pursue with such a, keeping in view such a kind of a, disposition, if this knowledge is pursued, then it will be taken over by another pursuit very quickly, and very quickly you will get bored or tired. Because you cannot really get bored of yourself. Even though you say, I'm sick of myself, nobody is sick of themselves. That's why even when someone is 92 years old and happens to be walking on a street and passes a reflecting surface in front of like a store window, what is the first thing they will do? Look. The face may be like a road map, fully lined with all kinds of creases. But still they will look, okay. For my age, I look okay. For very intriguing is this, that the people are very sensitive about their age. Always the tendency is to make it less. 29, 29, 29. What comes after 29? 29.
49
And
and
then, and then 39, 39, 39. What comes after 39? 39 alone follows 39. And then 49, 59 and so on. Except when they are really old, then they will say, they will increase at that time. Guess how old I am? An elderly person will say. 62? No, I'm 92. But I look 62 inside, the feeling is. So they will increase it, convey. I've never understood it. The whole life goes on trying to decrease the age, the real age, if you will. But then, when they grow older, they increase it so that they look good in compared to how really old they are. Human brain, really. Extremely ingenious. How ingenious. Oh, you are 92, but look how you look. Yeah, the person won't be 92. And this is how they make all these Guinness Book of World Records and everything. And because the birth certificates of the centurions are all completely lost, nobody remembers. And most of them are from Japan, eating fish and tofu and everything. They have survived a long, long time. And so now the oldest person is one lady, and she just completed her 116th birthday. Yeah, and she was shown blowing the candles. I mean, really, if one is in shape to blow candles off one's own cake at 116, I think really, what more to say. But she says she's 116 and we take it as a pramana, but we don't, but we don't know. Correct? Yeah, she may be only 96. We don't know that. She may have increased it just to look good. We don't know that. Yeah. So this is how the tendency is. So if Brahma Vidya is taken as to be a kind of another conjoined pursuit along with so many other pursuits, then this is not going to bless. Why? Is Brahma Vidya a jealous lady? No, not by any means. The nature of it is such that it is not one more pursuit. And the word upayanti shows that it is not one more pursuit. Yeah. In Gatau, we just looked up the root verb. Gatau means in the sense of going. Going means what? Not returning from. That is the word upayanti. Upayanti has two meanings here. We have to extrapolate. One is a going which is not fraught with a return, coming back to samsara. No. Going, that's why, the one who is gone is called pretaha, prakarshena itaha, not coming back. So that second conjugation, e, has a way of saying not coming back, has sense of finality. And then the second reason, and then the word upa also is requiring some analysis, approaching completely and approaching without fear. That is the thing. It's not a fear-based approach and it's not a curiosity-based dalliance. Like, let us see what this Upanishad is made of. And sometimes people use Upanishad classes for therapy. You come, you feel better and you go off and do your own things. This is not therapy. This is in fact super therapy, really. This is the therapy of therapy of therapy of therapy. This is what it is. And so, therefore, now we have to understand this fully and totally. And what we have to understand is that this is an approach without dalliance. There are no other competing pursuits, because this knowledge is without comparison. Really. Why? Because all the other knowledges, and this is going to be talked about later, Adi Shankara is very mindful of the way the Upanishad is unfolding. And the distinction between para and apara vidya is going to be made later. But he is already mindful of what the Upanishad contains. And in anticipation he says, upayanti, the ones who approach this as the true foundation of all knowledge, knowing which everything is as well as known. I don't want to spend too much time here, we'll see that later. That which is, because of which everything exists, I know that. I don't know each and everything discreetly, it's impossible to know. But I know that because of which everything exists. And that is again reiterated in the first mantra, we'll see that as well. And so, upayanti, and also they approach without fear. Every approach is fraught with fear. Fear of what, if you ask? It's fear of my desire not coming true. Yeah. Fear of rejection, fear of alienation. In every relationship, you want to become friends with somebody. Simple thing. You see this person, you meet them somewhere, in some group or some whatever, even in Vedanta class, and you say, oh, they look interesting, they have interesting questions to ask, I would like to get to know them better. Should I call them? Oh, what if they think I'm too forward? Should I email them? Then they will ask, how did you get my email address? And should I just say, oh, should I just go up to them directly and say, would you like to just have lunch, after class? What if they say no? Then I will feel shattered. So every approach is fraught with fear. And that fear makes the approach, full of hesitation and full of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. In the case of Upanishad, 2 steps backwards, 1 step may be forward. This is how everything is approached. But here Adi Shankara wants you to know that those people who approach with complete confidence, upayanti, who are not afraid of getting near the knowledge. Because unless you sit near the knowledge, how is it going to reveal itself to you? And unfortunately or fortunately, the knowledge is not descending into your head on its own. There is a mediator. Who is that? Guru. Yes. Without Guru, the knowledge will not come. So the Guru is form of a package deal. Correct? Like you sign up for a tour. This happened to me in Japan. I'm just telling from my own experience. I was signed up for a tour along with all the participants in this interfaith conference. They said, you are going on a tour. I said, okay. What else to say, So, then I went on this tour, and unbeknownst to us, we thought this is a time to talk about some of the things that were raised in the conference and some of the things that, which loose ends to be tied up. I thought this was the time that the participants and all the religious leaders are getting the time to, connect the dots and cross the I's, cross the T's. No, I's are not crossed, except if you are talking of I's. So this is what I thought. But what I thought was not what they thought, correct? So along with the tour, compulsorily, it was a tour guide was part of the package deal. And that person was paid to talk. Yes. And that person went on talking. She went on talking. Now we are going here, now we are going there. Knew perfect English and went on talking, pointing out all the things which, and religious leaders are useless to take on a tour. They're not interested in anything. Except, they had been come to do something and they were just interested in their own purpose. They were interested in catching up with each other. They were interested in how to keep in touch. They were interested in discussing the points raised. But this person kept on talking and pointing out every small detail, correct? Yeah. So like this, the tour into the world of the Upanishad, compulsorily comes with a guide. Like when you rent a car in India, the driver comes for free. You cannot rent a car without the driver. Maybe nowadays you can, but most of the time you cannot. So like this, when you sign up for the Upanishad classes, the teacher comes for free. Yes. And you cannot say, get side, I want the drishti of the Upanishad. You are blocking my view of the Upanishad. Hato, get side, let me see the Upanishad. You are blocking. You cannot say. Because the Guru is, if you think the Guru is a block, it's your own block. That's not the Guru's. The Guru is not a block. In fact, it revealed by the Guru alone, the Upanishad talks. And in this very Upanishad, Adi Shankara says, Brahmanveshanam Shastrajñopi Swatantrenna na kuryat. Please do not inquire into the Upanishad on your own, even if you know Sanskrit. Don't do that on your own, unguided, because this is, and then in elsewhere, Adi Shankara says, asampradaya with murkhavat upekshaniyaha. May you eschew the person who says, I got this knowledge apne aap, by myself. May you eschew this person. May you not even look at this person. May you eschew the person as you would keep away from someone who is a murkha. Who is a murkha? A fool, a deluded person. So you're not going to ask the fool, what should I do today? And you're not going to ask a important life questions, should I get married or not, to the fool. Because if you keep such a decision in the hands of the fool, then you will also make a foolish decision. So therefore, you have to, just as you keep at bay certain people who you don't trust, someone without guru, without sampradaya, you cannot trust. That is what Upanishad says. And here upayanti means you have to take all these things, and very beautifully, without any repetition, he has used upayanti for Upanishad, because upa here means sitting near the teacher, sitting near the guru, sitting near the shastra, not being afraid of the teacher or the shastra or Ishvara, which it reveals as yourself. That means what? That sitting near has its benefit. That sitting near means for a length of time. It is referring to an exposure. And sitting near the shastra and guru and near the topic of Ishvara, what do you get? Upasamipe, you get that upani, that nishchaya jnanam, that nishtha you get. The word ni in Upanishad stands for nishtha, nitaram sthitihi. That nishchaya jnanam, which is called nitaram sthitihi, that knowledge, that unshaking knowledge is referred to by the prefix ni. And upa here means close to what? Yourself. So sitting close to the teacher, you are led close to yourself. That is what it is. You are not led close to the teacher and you get to know the likes and dislikes of the teacher. That is not the point. You get to know yourself, because who is the teacher? An extension of you that you have called up out of your own desire and good karma. The teacher is really you. Yeah, oh, but this teacher is not me. It doesn't look like me. Look in the mirror, two different faces. Yeah, but that we are unfazed by that. Because we are not talking of the face of the teacher. We are talking of the principle here, the Guru principle, the Guru Tattva, which is the same in all. And here the outer Guru is manifest in an externalized form, because that person becomes a stand-in for the knowledge and Ishvara, which that person is going to reveal in keeping with the Shastra. And so therefore, I am not afraid to approach this knowledge with complete, total commitment, wholly committed, and then only I will be blessed. And that is what he says, ye janaha, upayanti, Brahma Vidyam upayanti. So this Brahma Vidya, this knowledge, those who wholly commit to, and then what? This is very important. How upayanti? Atma bhavena upayanti. Not anatma bhavena. This is laden. That is why I said, even though there is no full stop, there is no purna virama, we will still stop here. We will treat it as a full stop, because it is a loaded word. Atma bhavena upayanti. It's not enough to approach. It's not enough to approach with certainty. It's not enough to approach with commitment. It's not enough to approach with confidence, without fear, this knowledge and the teacher. But it is also important to approach as though one is approaching oneself. When you go on a journey to yourself, the steps cannot falter, and you cannot say, I lost the way. How can you lose the way to yourself? And you cannot say, I don't know where to go, because you are already pre-existing, correct? So the journey to yourself, this U-turn that we have frequently talked about, this U-turn you have made because you thought you were going off on a tangent. Samsara called you and said, Ehi, come, and gave you all these glittering things which stopped glittering as soon as you touched them. The non-Midas touch. There was one king in the fairy tale who, whatever he touched, turned into gold. and then he was the saddest fellow, because then he touched his wife and daughter, and everyone turned into gold, and he could no longer interact with them. But here this is the opposite. Whatever this jiva touches turns into a miserable grey stone, And so therefore, this is so the approach is, when you approach other things, it's with the feeling that it is away from me and I have to get it in order to be complete. That is how one approach marriages also. Marriages, I am incomplete, and with the help of this person, they will hopefully bring out the best in me. That's not what happens, but we like to be optimistic. And so this person will bring out the best in me, and I will bring out the best in them. With this feeling, the people get married. So then the approach there is, they are going to do something for me that I can't do on my own. That is the idea. That this quest is separate from myself. So anything that I seek is away from myself. And when I approach it as that this is away, it has to be brought into the realm of this is now mine. So I have a relationship to that thing in the form of a possessor-possessed relationship. That is why every samsari is possessed by desire. So this possessor-possessed relationship does not go even when you have that thing. Like you wanted a degree, then you went, in search of a degree, and then you got the degree, and then you say, okay, I have a PhD. You still become the possessor of the PhD. Whether you are in search of degree or pedigree, you still become the possessor of that very thing. That possessor-possessed sambandha does not go away. And this is not what is called Atma Bhavena Upayanti. Here, this is a U-turn from all such pursuits where the possessed relationship is kept intact. This is a complete U-turn, and this is what has to be taken seriously and understood without a grain of vagueness or doubt. And this U-turn sometimes is symbolized by the rivers. In India, the rivers are flowing, and sometimes they do a U-turn, and that place becomes a holy spot. Because we pray to that river making the U-turn. We pray to Bhagavan in the form of the river making a U-turn. May I be possessed with the grace, the discrimination, the viveka, the vairagya to make this U-turn back to myself. So upayanti, how? Atmatvena upayanti, having made the U-turn from other pursuits, because all the other pursuits I am left remaining the possessor. The possessor epithet, that qualification doesn't go away, and whatever I possess being finite, that possessor is not knocked off. The possessor keeps wanting to hold, keeps wanting to possess, keeps wanting beyond measure. And the possessor here in this vidya is knocked off, and all there is the Atma of the possessor, which is, doesn't need to be possessed, doesn't need to possess anything, and is free of all possession, is asanga. Asango hi ayam purushaha, asango hi ayam atma. Ayam atma asangaha, uninvolved. That which holds up the possessor and the possessed, without itself being possessed or the possessor, is the Atma. And this Atma Bhavena, that I am not approaching a teacher other than myself. I am approaching the call of my own heart, which is personified in this teacher, which is incarnated right now in this teacher. And that is how I possess Atma Bhavena. This is one meaning. And the second meaning is that this pursuit is different from other pursuits. In other pursuits, I gain something other than myself. Here, I gain myself alone. So therefore, Atma Bhavena ye janaha upayanti. And are we done with that? Are we done with the qualifications? No. Shraddha bhakti purassaraha santaha. And here he gives he just highlights two qualifications. He just says, forget Shama, Dama, Uparati, Titiksha. Viveka, of course, is understood, because without Viveka you would not have lasted even the introduction. So some Viveka is already there because you are coming to the classes regularly. Correct? And Vairagya, we have, talked about Vairagya until until the world has started to go around and make you feel slightly sick of the world. Till then we have talked about Vairagya, because this Upanishad is all about Vairagya, Vairagya, Vairagya. Let us not forget the deadly vrata that you had to take before you studied the Upanishad. What did you have to do? What does the student of this Upanishad have to do before studying the Upanishad? First, shave off the head. Okay, then that's easy to do. Right here is the hair cutting parlor. No, not enough. After that, you put some live coals in a basket on the newly mown head. And then you do 3 perambulations of the ashrama and the guru, and then you keep the live coals at the feet of the teacher and say that my head is on fire, please teach me. And only to such people the Upanishad is supposed to be taught, not to anyone else. And you don't have some kind of a fire retardant padding and then you keep the thing. No. Keep the thing on the naked head. Not even hair should be there to insulate. On the naked head you keep the live basket of coals, and then such a person who keeps the live basket of coals is not going to stop at the dining hall to have a cup of tea. I think I'll do 2 perambulations, have some tea and do the 3rd one, because the head is on fire. And neither are they going to exchange SMS and emails with other friends. If this doesn't work out, we should start a business. They are not going to do that. Right now the head is on fire. The only thing is finish the circumambulations and then, get this thing off the head quickly. Correct? So that is the sense of urgency with which one is supposed to approach the Upanishad. And it tells at the end, Shirovritam yaihi na chirnam. The one who have not completed this, unto those nadeyam. The teacher is cautioned, don't give this Upanishad. Oh, but then we are learning here, not a single person did this. Upalakshanaya, upalakshanaya, through by extrapolation, by feeling that head on fire. You feel the heat rising, the heat of the desire for knowledge rising, and then you come to class and you show your persistence in certain ways. And so the Vairagya has been already talked about, because nobody shaves the head unless you are a sannyasi. And so it says, don't even bother to come to this Upanishad unless you have taken sannyasa. Sannyasya shravanam kuryat. So therefore this is an extreme Upanishad. So Vairagya need not be highlighted. Viveka has already been talked about in Prayojana and Sambandha. If you can make the distinction and the connection, that means you have Viveka. So Viveka, Vairagya, Mumukshutvam is already highlighted. And then, and then what is left is the 6-pack. What is the 6-pack? Shava, list. Yeah, list. Uparati. And then Shitiksha, Shraddha, Samadhan. He takes Shraddha out of all these. Why? Because it's the most important. It's the most important. Bhagavad Gita also says, what does she say? Shraddhavan labhate samsaram. No, jnanam. Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. Just checking to see if you are paying attention. Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. The one who is the possessor of Shraddha gains the knowledge. And Shraddha is defined elsewhere as Shastrasya Guru Vakyasya Satya Buddhi Avadharana Sa Shraddha Kathitha Sadbhihi Yaya Aksharam Adhigamyate. Where has it been defined such? Is it Bhagavad Gita? Multiple choice question will make it. Is it Bhagavad Gita? Is it Tattva Bodha? Okay, one more choice. So many choices they are having. Aur kya pucha hai? We have lots of time. I'm going to wait. Yeah. So 2 choices. Kotidvayam asti. Yeah. Is it Bhagavad Gita? Answer is no. Is it Tattva Bodha? No. I wouldn't be asking this if you had not studied it already. Ayyayyo. Na padna to. What shall we do now? Let's see if anybody online understood. No, So, Viveka Chudamanihi. Yeah. Shastrasya Guruvakyasya Satyabuddhi Avadharana Sa Shraddha Kathitha Sadbhihi Yayaksharam Adhikamyate. This is what it is. So, Shastrasya with reference to the Shastra, to the teachings. Yes. Shasanat Trayate iti Shastra. So, that which protects upon teaching. So, this Upanishad with reference to the teaching and Guru Vakyasya with reference to the words of the teacher. Satya Buddhi Avadharana. Dharana means holding, keeping. From dhrut, to keep sustained. You have to have a sustained, confidence. A sustained Satya Buddhi. The sustaining of the Satya Buddhi. What is Satya Buddhi? This must be true. This must be true. Because nothing is being said to hoodwink me or to manipulate me. If anybody feels that the teacher is just making up stuff to manipulate the student, because this is a teaching without any manipulation. Because the teacher has nothing to gain. In Brahma Vidya, the teacher honestly has nothing to gain. The teacher is teaching out of a sense of compassion and because the person can teach and there is no reason not to teach, the teacher continues to teach. The teacher teaches. And if the teacher sees that there is no one to learn, the teacher will quietly stop teaching also. And so therefore, the teacher has nothing to gain. And so the teacher teaches because there are seekers to learn. That is how the teaching situation comes about. Whether online or offline, whatever it is, there are people to learn. So therefore that brings about the teaching situation. And there is no guru for sale. The guru becomes a guru. Yeah, half price off. There is no half off Christmas sale guru, Thanksgiving sale guru, labor sale guru. No. The guru is not a quintessential guru. Someone calls the person guru and the person becomes, it's a relational title. So the guru becomes a guru because somebody says, please be my guru, you are my guru, I select you as my guru. The student doesn't wait to be selected, That is what one does, for prom and marriage. That's a different thing. This is not a case of like that. This is here, like I said, the onus of Shishyatvam is on the student, and the student has to go forth and say, I want you to teach me. And until then, the teaching will not begin, and the Guru Shishya Sambandha, the relationship of the Guru and the student will not begin. So that formal desire for the knowledge is expressed, and here in this Upanishad it's going to be taught how to approach, etc. And that is what is the basis of this whole entire teaching. So here you cannot approach some random person and say, I put my whole lifeline at your feet, and then here please teach me what is my true identity. That is giving someone too much power, correct? Because how do they know who you are? Where is that thing? So without the mediating factor, the bridge between that random person that you are approaching with confidence, as we saw, and you is Shraddha. That is the bridge that is built between the Guru and the student is Shraddha. Otherwise the Guru is just a random person. Okay, the random person who is well equipped in this knowledge, doesn't matter, so many knowledges, so little time. And here the Guru has this something called Brahma Jnanam. Okay, I think I want Brahma Jnanam because that is the one that lets me go from samsara, removes the fear and the sorrow. But then in approaching this Guru, there will be a lot of fear. There will be a lot of sorrow and fear. In approaching the Guru itself, all the fear and the sorrow of samsara is manifest. And suddenly one starts to think, and people tell me, you are not looking at me. I said, how can I look at you? You are taking class online. How to look? Even if I look, how will you know I am looking at you or the other people taking class? No, but you are not looking at me. I came to class. And such a person always I find that such people who say you're not looking at me, go and occupy the seat in the longest corner somewhere behind the paper towel, behind the pillar, behind the stairway banister, behind a tall person, like a basketball player. They will sit in the back. और वो पीछे बैठ के they will say teacher is not looking at me. This is what is called a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, it is a setup. Yeah. This is a setup. Yeah, if you want to be seen, stay in my line of vision. That is what it is. Stay in the line of the teacher's vision. And people who've been taking the classes for some time know this, Anywhere, like in any of the ashrams in India, they will clamor to sit in the front row. Even if it means coming 1 hour early before class and putting a bag or a tag, something, they will do that. Why? Because they want to be, they want to learn, but they want to be seen, and that's the thing. So in whole life you don't want to be seen, and in the teaching situation you want to be seen, but you make it so that you are not seen. And then you say, I feel invisible in the class. I don't belong. This is where an overdose of Shraddha is indicated. Shraddha, you have to help yourself to this Shraddha. That is the bridge. Otherwise the fear and sorrow of samsara will consuming you in the approach of the Guru. Then what? Where else is samsara? Right here you are reproducing samsara, even in the teaching situation. Shastra, what is there? All the time it's saying the same thing. Atma, Atma, Atma. Brahman, 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 What is there? So like this, one is not taking the Shastra for granted, one is not taking the teacher for granted. So even in connection to the teacher, what happens is that there are various projections that are projected. And the projections come not from the present day. The projection always goes back to the unconscious, the first formative years of one's life. 3 to 5, really. That is the thing. 0 to 5, we can put it. So that is what it is. So all the unfulfilled fears, expectations from the mother, from the father, from the caregiver, if there was no mother, father, and all the trust that was gone, because the child always trusts the parent. The parent is God. Oh, she can walk, he can talk, I can't do either, I can barely flip over. Oh, this must be God. And then soon the God loses the G and becomes odd in the eyes of the child. Mother never available, father inconsistent, one day loving, another day angry. And the child, it's the saddest thing to watch the child come to grips with the fallibility of the parents. It's the saddest thing. But it is something universal. Everyone undergoes that. Everyone has to go through this disenchantment with one's own parents. And then what? And put that disenchantment by discovering the mother and the father of the universe. Put that disenchantment at the feet of the mother and the father of the universe. That's the only way to resolve it, is in the discovery of Ishvara and in the discovery of Ishvara as oneself. And both these are pointed out in the Adi Shankaresque way of Shraddha Bhakti Purassaraha. So the relative resolution of one's conflicts, one's pains, one's sorrows, one's expectancies, and and enchantments and disenchantments, which are otherwise transferred to or projected upon the teacher and the Shastra, are what? Are resolved at the feet of Ishvara. That is why we need shrines. That is why we need an altar of surrender. An altar of surrender of that which cannot be otherwise rendered. You have to surrender. And what is an altar of surrender? That which alters me from a simpering, jiva, someone who is always subject to insecurity, sorrow, fear, to someone who is confident and relatively free of fear. That is what is needed before one can commit to this knowledge. The discovery of Ishvara as a law of the universe that ratifies your parentage, no matter how rotten it was. That this is the parentage for my karma, I had to gain, I had to have this. And this is how I had to be. And because I am like this is in fact rather than a curse, it has become a blessing. Why is it a blessing? Because of this, it has brought me to this knowledge. This is what it is. No matter what one's early circumstances were, no matter how difficult, how hard, I stop blaming myself, I stop blaming the others and see it as a law. That is Ishvara here. Seeing that as a law, as an unalterable law, I make peace with it. And that making peace is the act of surrender. That is what is called bhakti here. And so there is a certain inner tranquility. You see how by bhakti he has brought in shamadama, uparati, samadhanam, everything he has brought. Everything he has brought. Just by saying this one word bhakti, it has to be properly understood. So this bhakti is nothing else other than the relative suspension of all my fears and anxieties and my disenchantments. Rather than projecting it on the teacher or the book, I project it on in the place where it can be held, which is at the altar of surrender. That is why when you go to the temple, Ishvara doesn't talk back. Even you say, Ishvara, you are an idiot. Ishvara will not say, I beg to differ. Do you see what all I have done? How infallible this plan is? Ishvara is not going to talk back. That is why the surrender is very important. Even in the beginning, if the surrender appears contrived, it is extremely important, because through the contrived surrender, the real surrender comes out, because really one wants to surrender, one wants to let go. One doesn't want to hold on to this or be held on by this. And so I keep my anger, my fears, my wanting to be wanted, my wanting to be rescued, my wanting salvation, all these things, I keep it nicely bundled at the feet of the Ishvara. Yes, there is a custom when people go to Shabarimalai, they take these bundles and offer it, and the bundle is nothing but your own karma you offer to Bhagavan. That is what it is. These Ayyappa bhaktas, bundle, it's called Irumudi, and this Irumudi is nothing but your own karma you offer to the Lord. You climb the stairs of the temple and offer it to the Lord. So here it's a very significant thing. You offer your own karma, including your own emotional makeup. You offer it so that you don't by mistake direct it in the wrong place towards the Shastra. Oh, this has nothing to teach me. That means what? You will stop coming to the classes. Oh, the teacher is not good. Teacher is not good means what? Oh, the teacher is partial, looks too much towards one student and not towards the other. Karma.
Yeah. It's okay, I just need to go.
Yeah. So then, the teacher is partial. The teacher is this, the teacher is that. That is all a web, a spider web of the own insecurities from the past. It has nothing to do with the present. So that means what? That means that, you think like the spider, you have caught the teacher in your web, but actually you have just cast your own web of disillusionment over the whole teaching situation. Thereby the teaching situation will not bless you. So therefore, bhakti purassaraha, the bhakti has to be in front, and that bhakti is towards Guru, towards Bhagavan first, seeing Bhagavan as the author of everything, seeing Bhagavan as the truth of everything, and seeing Bhagavan as the truth of the circumstances of your own life and your own disappointments as well, the author of everything. And then you spread the chaddar of what? Spread the chaddar of Shraddha. That is what it is. And then you prostrate on it. That's what it is. Shraddha is the bridge between you and the teaching, you and the teacher. Without Shraddha, there is no connection to the teacher. Because the teacher is not going to come out and say, just have a relationship of going to coffee with you. Teacher is not interested. Teacher is not interested in going and seeing a movie with you. So what other relationship can you have with a teacher? It is one of Shraddha and Bhakti. That is the only thing. So keep the Shraddha and Bhakti in front. Let them be the horses that drive the Jivik cart. Yeah, that is what it is. So the Ragadvesha wheels, if they are operated by the Shraddha and Bhakti horses, they fall in line, correct? So this is what it is. So here, Shraddha Bhakti Purassaraha. Shraddha cha Bhakti cha Purassarataha. So they go in front. Shraddha Bhakti walks first and then you follow. You go afterwards. Let your Shraddha and Bhakti be unleashed first to graze at the feet of the Guru, and then you follow. This is what it is. And then only the knowledge is going to be blessed. So you see, such detailed way of approaching, even before the Upanishad starts. Bhagavan Adi Shankara is giving. Adi Shankara has given so beautifully. So he says here, let us read. So, Shraddha Bhakti Purastaraha Santaha. So those who are endowed with Shraddha and Bhakti, totally, completely, they only are blessed by the study of the Upanishad, by approaching the Guru, definitively without any, hindrance, by previous karma and by previous emotions, which are also the product of karma, which is the throw up of karma, emotions. Really, if emotions had a, upchuck, it would be all, if the karma threw up, it would be emotions. Yeah, messy. That's all it is. So then, so keeping that in view, Adi Shankara says, those who have Shraddha and Bhakti as a bridge to the Upanishad and teaching. And there is in Samaveda, Rathantara Samagana. And what is that Rathantara Samagana? Shraddhaya Shraddham Setunstara Dustaran. This is Samaveda. Dustaran Setumstara. Cross the bridge that is difficult to cross. And it's very difficult to approach and, tell some random person that you've just heard off the internet, oh, I want to study from you. It's very difficult. And so therefore what? You help yourself, having ascertained the background of such a person, and make sure that they come from a sound parampara and that they know how to teach. And once you know that, then you approach them, you cross the difficulty of have no Shraddha. Shraddhaya, with Shraddha. Cross what? Ashraddham tara. Ashraddham stara. Cross Ashraddha with Shraddha by building the bridge of Shraddha. What is Ashraddha? Doubt, fear, underconfidence, projection and transference. This is Ashraddha. Shraddha is the absence of all that. Satya Buddhi Avadharana, the ability to hold on to the focus on the truth. That truth, despite all, you transcend the personality of the teacher and you only look at the person that the teacher represents. You don't bother with the personality of the teacher because you are not trying to get to know the personality of the teacher. The personality just is like a shadow. So when someone walks into the room, you don't say, how do I get to know your shadow better? You get to know the person. So you don't try to, it's a useless thing. The personality is there as an embellishment. In someone who has the knowledge, the personality is an embellishment. Like in Krishna, Bhagavan Krishna, you can say, oh, Bhagavan Krishna has so many ragadveshas. He will not step out without peacock feather. He will not step out without yellow clothes, pitambara dhari. He will not step out without Radha by the side. He is addicted to Radha. You can say like this. The difference between Krishna and oneself is what? That Krishna without flute and what is that? Feather, without feather and flute is unfazed. Yes. Whereas the Jiva without feather and flute is totally upset. So this is the difference. So the ragadveshas become alankara when they have been transcended by knowledge. They become abhushana, they become a embellishment, or they become like a toothless child. You put the hand in the mouth, it bites, the sensation is not unpleasant, you know. It's not at all, you don't get hurt. So it's the ragadveshas, teeth have gone off from this ragadvesha. So that is, in the person of knowledge, the ragadveshas are just embellishments. You don't try to get to know the embellishments or be affected by the embellishments. You try to see what the person represents, what the person knows, and you try to know what the person knows. That is the relationship made on the building blocks of Shraddha. So those Shraddha and Bhakti have to be unleashed first, and then the person follows. So Shraddha Bhakti Purasaraha Teshameva, for them alone the Upanishad gives the prayojana. And the prayojana, as Asakrit Braviti, he tells the prayojana again and again. He already talked about the prayojana by quoting the Upanishad earlier, Vidyate Hridaya Grantihi, etc. But that was the Upanishad's language. Here Adi Shankara reiterates the prayojana in his own language. And what does he say? Tesham Garbha Janma Jara Rogadi Anarthapugam Nishatayati Varamba Brahma Vamayati. Let us stop there. Yeah, so Tesham, for such people. Which people? The aforementioned people equipped with Shraddha Bhakti, who are not afraid of making the Upanishad the primary pursuit in life, and having a guru, and not having a guru just for the purposes of collecting guru, and and to enhance their guru collection, of really seriously seeking the knowledge. For such serious seekers who seek after unleashing the Shraddha and Bhakti, devotion and Shraddha means faith pending understanding. Those who keep that in front and who always keep it in front, who let them precede, let the Shraddha and Bhakti precede their approach, they are blessed by the Upanishad in two ways. The first thing is Garbha Janma Jara Rogadi Nishatayati. Catch hold of the word Nishatayati. Nishatayati means mitigates, makes it better immediately. What does it make it? What does it bring down? What does it make it better? Samsara fever. Samsara temperature. So the one who says, I am afflicted by bhava roga, by the roga of samsara, the Upanishad becomes the Bhishak. What is Bhishak? Doctor. Upanishad becomes the Vaidya, the Ayurvedic doctor, and says, I will bring the temperature down immediately. The Upanishad is the paracetamol. Yes, is the fever reducer of the samsara. Is the paracetamol of samsara, is the aspirin of samsara, removes all the aches and pains of samsara, is the pain killer of samsara. In fact, is the killer of samsara. By killing samsara, it kills the pain. And what is samsara? How do you diagnose samsara fever? What are its components? What are the symptoms of samsara disease? Samsara syndrome? What are the components? First is Garbha. What is Garbha? The child inside the womb. So from the point of not the mother carrying the child, but from the point of the child itself, this little being in the womb, what is it thinking? What are its thoughts? And then it has its own karma. And that's why sometimes in the womb itself it requires surgery. I heard about one surgery. They had to use tiny little, what is that, scalpel and everything, like doll's thing. Because in utero surgery, one small embryo needed. That is its karma, you see. That is its karma, that even before it's born, the first thing it's seeing is the scalpel, It's not looking at its mother's face, it's not, looking at Surya Bhagavan, the sun, it's not looking at even the doctor's face or the dai. Dai means the midwife, nobody. It is looking at it's not even looking at the doctor's face, it is looking at the shiny, evil looking tiny scalpel, it is looking at, that is its karma, you see. So even Garbha, even in the womb, the child has certain karma, because otherwise why will it inhabit this particular womb? It's not an accident, correct? And the birth itself is another big karma. Oh, pun intended. That's why it's called labor, karma. That is what it is called. Birth itself, my God. And people say 17 hours in labor, 24 hours in karma for the labor for the child, labor for the mother also. You don't think that the child is okay after labor. That's why in the Hindu tradition you massage the child continuously every day for 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and you put it out in the sun. You put oil, you massage the baby. And there are qualified baby massagers, available, who are hired for 3 months to just massage this tiny newborn, because otherwise that's why it is in pain. To take away the shock of the birth, the trauma of the birth, the child is massaged with oil and put in the sun every single day. It's given an oil bath. And so this is the whole thing. The child is traumatized by the birth. The birth is a trauma. And and if we believe in reincarnation, obviously the child is thinking, where am I? Asking fundamental spiritual questions. What has brought me here? I thought I had it. I attended 2 Upanishad classes in the last time. Still I have been born. How did this happen? I attended 1 or 2 classes. I did attend. Yes, I left it. I didn't finish. But still, this is what it is. And so the birth itself is traumatic, and for so many reasons, because the child, that's why every child, the birth begins with a cry. That is why it is traumatic. No baby comes out laughing. No, they say Buddha came out laughing. That's the only exception to this rule. When Buddha was born, there was no cry. He came out laughing. When Krishna was born, he didn't cry. That's because he knew if he cried, he would come under Kamsa's, Kamsa would dash him to the ground, because Kamsa knew that his destroyer is going to be born. So he kept quiet, he didn't cry. And also Krishna was a blue baby, some ventricular problem was there. He didn't cry out perhaps, But the thing is, every baby, other than we are talking of Krishna and Buddha, they are considered avatars, forget them. Those who are not avatars, even if the baby doesn't cry, you make it cry. Because that's the only way it is breathing. Yeah. So you start life with a cry. This is what the whole thing is. This is the cry of samsara. This is the primeval cry. Oh why is the cry. Why, oh why, again, all over again I have to do this. And then janma is followed by what? Jara. What is jara? The root verb of the noun geriatrics. Yeah, geriatry. What is geriatry? Yes. Janma, and then janma is very soon followed by jara. That's why if you look at a baby, it looks like an old man. There's no difference. Old man also has no hair, no teeth, and all wrinkly prune-like skin. The baby also, when it comes out, has wrinkly prune-like skin, and there is actually taratamya. There is almost an identification, a comparison that can be made between the old person and the baby. Same. So that is a sign that this baby is going to end up like that, correct? Yeah. Baby is on all fours, old man is also on all fours to get to one place to another. Arthritis and this itis and itis, samsara-itis, all the itises. Itis means inflammation of some kind. So all these itises come and make life difficult. And so therefore what? Baby uses a walker, old man uses a walker, everything is one and the same. So from Janma, Adi Shankara goes straight to Jara. And then in between is what? Read. Don't look at me.
Roga.
Roga. Yes. So in between Janma and Jara, birth and old age are, are peppered by, punctuated by what? What is Roga? That which happens as a result of Bhoga is Roga. That's all. Too much Bhoga leads to Roga. Yes. You have heard the adage, you have heard the adage, right? If you are a yogi, you eat once a day if you are a yogi. You eat twice a day if you are a bhogi. You eat thrice a day if you are a rogi. Rogi means sick fellow. Bhogi is the conspicuous consumer. Yogi is the one who does not live in order to eat, who eats to live. Yeah, difference, big difference. So here, Janma leads to Jara because of what is Roga. All kinds of Rogas. First you have physical Rogas. And first you feel I don't have any Roga. And then after that one Roga comes. I have told you this. By the time the person hits 40, you say, okay, one pill I'll take for maintenance, B complex, multivitamin, one a day it is called. Then by the time one is 50, 1/4 of the food comprise pills and 3/4 food. 60, half pills and potions and then food. 70, 3/4 pills and potion, 1/4 food. And then 70 plus, almost everything pills and potions, food is but a notion. That's all it is. Yeah. Food has to be pulverized. Another thing common with the baby and the old man. You have to put the food in the blender for the baby, and then for the old person also you have to make everything pre-digested, aka feeding tube. That's all it is. So this Roga and the food really, the more you eat, the more Rogas there are really. The more you eat a particular thing, that particular thing you have to have Vairagya from, After a while you say, first you for the Ahamannam, 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 Ahamannado, Ahamannado, Ahamannada. And Taittiriya Upanishad, the enlightened person like a madman chants this. And what does the person say? I am the food, I am the eater of the food. And here is where the wisdom lies. First 40 years you eat the food, and then the next 40 years the food starts eating into you. Therefore you say, I have too much sugar, I have too much cholesterol, I have too much ghee running in my veins, I have too much this. So you have to keep cutting all the food down. Why? Because the food has started to eat into you. This is what is called Roga. The normal trajectory of the food taking revenge. Yay, long live me. The food says, I was there before you came. Annat Purushahasi, from me you came. And you go back to me. So in between you feel like you are controlling me and making me GMO. That GMO is going to attack you only. Yeah, make me into GMO. Long live Monsanto. No problem. Yeah. You are only going to, be attacked as a result of genetic modification. Your genetics, your DNA is going to be modified, and you are the one who is going to lament, because there is nothing bigger lament than the lament of a rogi. First bhogi, then rogi. And one way out of it is to become tyagi. That we can talk about later. But this is what it is. So Janma, Jara, Garbha Janma, Jara, Roga, Adi. Adi means Adi is at the beginning of which list. So if you make a list, pre-birth, birth, disease, old age, what is missing from this list?
Death.
Very good. Death. Adi Shankara is being very polite. He doesn't want to lose his students, and he doesn't want to lose the people that will study Bhashya in the future. So he has left that to your imagination. Yeah, Adi Padarth, Mrityuhu. Shad Vikaras are there. What are the Shad Vikaras? Birth, survival of Jayate, Asti, Vardhate, viparinamate, and then what? Apakshiyate, and then Ram Nam Satya hai, Tata bye bye, Vinashyati is destroyed. So this destruction and the rebirth he doesn't point out. Rebirth he points out by pointing out Garbha, that what is occupying your womb is not suddenly that came. It has come from a long way. It has already had a history. It has already had a trajectory. Its karma has chosen you as a conduit for it to come and express itself. And so therefore this is something which is very beautiful. And he says that all these anartha, what are these? He calls them samsara karanam. These are what? Samsara karanam, he is calling them later, the samsara karanam, and more immediately he is calling them anartha pugam, which is a 4-letter word in Sanskrit. And anartha pugam, pugam means a group. Anartha means a group of undesirable things. You think birth is desirable, but when you look at birth as we just did, it doesn't seem very hot anymore, Yeah, this is the disease of samsara. Samsara fever symptoms include all these things which are together called by Adi Shankara as anartha pugam. Pugam is group, elsewhere called vrata. Vrata is also group. Anartha vratan, anartha pugan. Anartha pugam means a group of anartha. Artha, desirable. Anartha, undesirables. A whole onslaught of undesirable things unleashed by samsara, which is the temperature of samsara, the ever ascending temperature of samsara. Anartha pugam nishatayati. At the very beginning, what it does is it mitigates all these. The fever of samsara is gone because it makes janma, jara, vyadhi, mrityu, everything as though. Because janma is not real. What is real is that which doesn't have janma. That which dies is not real. That which doesn't die, the one who is observing that which dies, is the one who is real. And relocating the I from the unreal to the real, the new identity, the new identification, samsara anartha pugam nishatayati. And then what? Even though he says va, we have to take it as cha. Param va, and further, param brahma gamayati. Gamayati means causes you to go, leads you. Leads you where? Leads you to param brahma. That U-turn is complete when you come after going round Robin Hood's barn, and then what? Coming back to yourself. You come back to yourself. A roundabout way after a few births and deaths and rogas in between, after too many of them, you come back to yourself, and that is what is called leading one to Brahman. That Brahman is not away from you, so the leading is more no longer misleading. That is what is leading. Leading here is not somewhere else, back to you, because you have lost the hunt. You have lost the smell, the vasana of Advaita you have lost. You have lost the scent of Advaita. So basically you are being led back to yourself as a blessing of the Guru, teaching the Upanishad. This is what you get. Samsarana karanam va atyantam avasadayati vinashayati iti Upanishad. So this Upanishad, what is it? Samsara karanam, you said it is cha, right? Here? Is it va or cha in your book? Va. Okay, so yeah. So samsara karanam va. So the karana of samsara, which is what? Ajnanam, avidya. Because of avidya, I take the jara, janma, mrityu, everything to be real. Because of avidya, I take it as I am subject to all that. And that samsara karanam is removed because avidya is removed. What is avidya? Avidya means the ignorance centered on the I is removed, and then what happens? Samsara karanam va atyantam avasadayati. Avasadayati would have been enough. Destroys, from sad, visharane. Same. He uses the same word of the Upanishad. Shadulr becomes sad, and you know, and he uses the same root verb and makes another one, avasadayati, you know, and nishchayena, ava also has a sense of finality, and so meaning in the sense it destroys without a trace. And then that he reiterates and he says atyantam, completely. So the dandelion garden is destroyed, not even one seed has been left out to germinate. The samsara cannot germinate, it cannot propagate, everything shithilayate, it is uprooted completely. So the weed, Upanishad is not a weed killer that after 3 months has to be reapplied. No. Vishanita Upanishad is samsara killer. It has killed the cause at the root. It has uprooted samsara. So there is no coming back, literally or figuratively, of the ajnanam, and there is no coming back of the jiva itself. You know, in order to learn this again, atyantam avasadayati, and then what does he? He explains avasadayati, vinashayati, because the bhashya has to explain the text and explain itself also. So here is a classic case where he's explaining himself. Vinashayati, destroys without a trace, iti Upanishad. Very briefly he gives the meaning of the word Upanishad, and then he says Upani Purvasya Sadehe Evam Arthasmaranat. He leaves you on this very beguiling note, Arthasmaranat. Arthasmaranat, on account of remembering what? Remembering what the word Upanishad stands for. From where? He assumes you have studied the bhashya, his bhashya to the Kathopanishad, which he wrote previously. He assumes you have studied where he says Upani Purvasya Sadeheda Quip Pratyayantasya. So he talks about the whole, the declension of the word the Upanishad, the derivation of the word Upanishad. And he talks about that and he says Sadehe. He makes, this is a very typical grammarian way of referring to the dhatus. There are two nirdeshas, two traditions. One is called ik nirdesha and the other one is called tip nirdesha, and together they are known as ikstipa nirdesha. So sad, if I want to refer to sad, I don't say sadasya because that can mean something else. So I make the verb into sadi, just like Panini, Panini had all this ik nirdesha in the dhatu pata. So if I want to refer to the root verb sad, I make it into sadi. And the sixth case of sadi is sadehe, like harihi, harehe. So, and then that is called ik nirdesha. Very common usage. You will find this further in the bhashya also, that's why I am telling. And the other one is tip nirdesha. You make a whole word, guhati. And then you say guhatehe samvarnarthatvat, so gu of guhati. So that is called tip nirdesha. You decline it in the present tense and then you make a noun out of it by making it into the sixth case or whichever case you want to use. So these are two ingenious and very established forms of referring to certain words if you want to refer to them in quotes, because in Sanskrit we don't have quotation marks. This is also stands in as a way to the quotation marks. So what does the word Upanishad stand for, and what are the three meanings that are there, that we will see in detail tomorrow, brighter and earlier, because let us not forget, this is a test of your Shraddha and Bhakti tomorrow, really, because all the times change on Sundays. Why? Because that is the day you can sleep in supposedly and adjust. Go home and sleep now itself, so that you will be adjusted by tomorrow. And so tomorrow we will meet 1 hour earlier. So if you are logging on from the United States, that's not a problem, because it is advertised everywhere, and now we have clocks that reset themselves. And but if you are logging on from India, please log on 1 hour earlier than what you did today. Exactly 1 hour, that's all. That's all I ask. 1 hour, you can do that. Say yes. Say yes. Ah, okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate शांति 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 हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम. Questions? Any questions? I will take today, otherwise you can ask tomorrow also, no problem. Boliye, yes. Yes, tell.
Okay, you mentioned avatara.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Yeah, avatara means, the one, it is Bhagavan, Ishvara, incarnated in a particular form is called avatar, human or otherwise.
Okay.
Like Jesus is an avatara.
Okay.
Yeah. Even though in Christianity, Jesus is regarded as a son of God, we say is an incarnation of Bhagavan on earth. When things are very difficult, when dharma is on the decline, Bhagavan has to take things in one's own hands, and Bhagavan has to say, okay, I have to see what's going on. And then when things get really desperate, Bhagavad Gita, there is a promise made that the avatara will come and fix things for the time being, get things on a certain status, and then go away. That is what how we regard Rama, Krishna, etc. That's why there are all these stories, because the stories are nothing but glories. And in connecting with the glories, one connects to Ishvara. And there is something very heartening to see that Ishvara is available right here and right now. So Lord Dakshinamurti Avatara, so Avatara of Lord Shiva, like that we say. Lord Rama, Krishna, Avatara of Lord Vishnu, like that. So even though technically there are a finite number of avatars, we can have infinite number of avatars, small and big. Yeah. Every guru is regarded as an avatara. Yes. Wonderful. Any other questions? Yes.
How to say? In this particular section, you were talking about making a personal dedication, a commitment, in lots of ways, and then there's also, on the other side, of just letting go within something because too much tension stops things from happening.
Yeah.
And I remember you told a story about you used to read for Pujya Swamiji.
Yes.
And that at a certain point he'd just tell you what the story was after the first line or two.
Yeah, he would know. He would know the whole book after one chapter. He would say the second chapter is this, he would tell. Yeah.
And so last night I went to see a film,
Uh-huh.
and the whole film was Vedanta, because it was people, all of them very good people.
Yeah.
Nice to see a movie about people that just inside together, and yet it was all the turmoils and things that came about because of perceptions and tensions and the right way to be, and so the movie had all these threads. And so I realized that in me there's this a constant checking on, am I doing enough, am I doing the right, am I, all of this, and yet the fact that I watch a movie and it's Vedanta says that it's already doing what it is.
Yeah. There is, in the beginning you have to put effort. And also what you ask is a good question, because we have to know, the Viveka lies in knowing where to let go and where to put the effort. You cannot say Shraddha will come on its own, I'll let go, and instead put the effort in making chocolate cake. That's a different kind of a thing, you see. There you have to know where to put the effort. And you know your own psyche. And you know exactly what you need and what you don't need and where to put the effort. So that comes with a certain discrimination. And it is true that in the beginning you have to put a little extra effort into Shraddha Bhakti. After that it becomes you. It becomes more natural. So until it becomes a natural way, you make an effort. Like getting up in the morning. It's so difficult, right? So you have to put the alarm for a few days. And then you have to be alarmed into waking up. And then after that, waking up is not so alarming. It happens naturally. The body clock ideally resets itself, and then you wake up naturally. So that's how it is. So in the beginning, the Shraddha and Bhakti become external disciplines that I value, and I try to keep for myself, and then I try to emulate, and then the Shraddha and the Bhakti become more natural, and you don't have to put so much effort. Good question. Anything else? Okay. 3:30 there is an advanced Sanskrit class. Panini, you can come if you want.
Is it on my screen somewhere?
I don't think so. We never advertised it. Yeah, get better soon, Ramagiri.